Meanwhile, West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin is calling for a state of emergency at our southern border. Manchin telling Fox News Digital, quote, far-left Democrats in Washington have to come to grips with the fact that we have to shut down the border. Joining me right now is North Dakota Governor and 2024 Republican presidential candidate Doug Burgun. Governor, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to be with you, Maria. Thanks for having me on.
Where do you stand on this issue?
Well, this is just crazy. Joe Biden has been pouring gas on the border crisis for 2.5 years. And then now some people are saying, hey, we've got a state of emergency. I mean, think about it. Since Joe Biden took office, over 6.5 million people have been papered as asylum seekers. So that's every man, woman, and child in the population of Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Joe Biden's home state of Delaware, throw in Montana. That's the 6.5 million people that are known to have been into the country. And he would have done nothing about this until you had some liberal mayors screaming that they couldn't handle it anymore. He didn't do anything when you had governors like Ducey in Arizona and Abbott in Texas saying, look, we've got issues down here. They turned the other way. Now when they're showing up in New York City, people are starting to say, hey, maybe we need to do something. But this crisis has been going on. I've been down to the border more in the last 2.5 years than Joe Biden has. We've got troops down there from North Dakota helping to try to secure this thing. And it's not just immigration. I mean, the transnational criminal organizations are better funded in many cases than our border patrol. And then we've got, we're taking mass casualties, 300 deaths a day in our country today. Every day, tomorrow, the next day, since Joe Biden, we've lost the equivalent of 5 Vietnams worth of casualties since he took office to overdose deaths. 70% of those are fentanyl poisonings. Yeah. And now they decide it's an emergency.
Well, Joe Biden is going to meet with Xi Jinping, we're told. So I don't know if he'll bring up the fentanyl crisis since the underlying components of fentanyl come from China. But so far, he hasn't brought up any of the hot topic, important issues to the leader of China. So I'm not optimistic about that. But let me get your take on the administration's plans to forgive another $9 billion in student loan debt. They announced this on Wednesday. They want to forgive the student loan debt for 125,000 borrowers, Governor. We know that the Supreme Court has already ruled this unconstitutional, and yet the Biden administration is still pushing to forgive people's debt. Your thoughts?
Well, this is absolutely one of the most unfair things, and it's just literally a pre-election political payback of people that he thinks will vote for him. I mean, $9 billion to go buy votes is what this is. And this is, highly inflationary, because when you forgive debt, it's the same as printing money. We've got inflation. Biden inflation is choking every American already. But, what about two siblings? One of them said, hey, I'm going to go, go to trade school. I'm going to get a job. I'm working in the economy right now, paying my taxes. Another one went to college and piled up college debt. What are we doing? What are we telling America when we say we're going to forgive, one person's debt and not another? And I think the taxpayers ought to just be up in arms about this, because it's so absolutely un-American that somehow the federal government's going to print money to pay off people that have the ability to go to college. And I don't want to say, that this is poor people paying off rich college kids' debt, but in many cases, that's what this is. And it's not fair even within families or within people that made different choices. People that made smart financial choices are being penalized. People that piled up college debt for degrees that don't pay off the debt are being rewarded. And it's patently unfair, and it undermines the whole idea. In America, if you borrow money, it's your responsibility to pay it back.
Yeah. Governor, I want to get to a number of issues that are important to the American people as you're running for president. You touched on economic issues and this debt forgiveness. I want to talk about China and also the weaponization of government. The Wall Street Journal reporting a supposedly blacklisted Chinese chip maker, Semiconductor Manufacturing International, has a thriving business in the United States. They write, quote, China's largest semiconductor maker has been declared a Chinese military supplier by the Pentagon. It's been blacklisted by the Commerce Department and added to the Treasury Department list, banning Americans from trading its stock. However, the business is booming in the United States. The Journal says despite being blacklisted, the Commerce Department granted licenses to U.S. companies to work with SMIC, and the Chinese company pulled in $1.5 billion in revenue from American companies just last year. So is this just a farce that the administration is trying to make believe like they're tough on China, and yet they allow these Chinese companies tied to the military to do business in America? What is going on?
Well, the first thing is that starts right with Joe Biden. if we're in a Cold War with China, but he's not saying that. I mean, you can use all kinds of words like strategic competition, but that just masks the fact that we're actually in a Cold War and they're the #1 strategic threat to the country. And you nailed it, Maria, with your numbers. This blacklist thing is also a farce, because if you say they're blacklisted, but all you have to do is get a license from the Biden administration to sell to them, it's not a blacklist. It's like Swiss cheese. And tens of billions of dollars have been flowing through all kinds of these holes in the export controls. And we're feeding the enemy. And, everybody thought that these were going to prevent them from getting down to being able to make a 7-nanometer chip. And now they've produced one, and now we're shocked that they've been able to do it. But of course, we shouldn't be surprised, because we've been funneling technology and dollars to them.
Yeah.
And the Biden administration doesn't recognize we're in a Cold War.
I mean, why not? Is he compromised? It takes me to the next issue, which is corruption in Washington. What are you going to do about it?
Well, first of all, I know from my 30-plus years in the private sector before I got into governor, I've created more jobs than all the other folks that I was on stage with. I've been making payroll since my mid-20s, longer and more jobs than anybody I'm competing with. And so I know one thing is, if you're going to have trust in an organization with your partners, your customers, your vendors, your team members, it's got to start at the top. People have to trust the leadership. And right now, America is looking at Joe Biden and going, wow, is he compromised? Because it sure looks like some of the stuff is influence peddling. Now, everybody's innocent until they're proven guilty, but it's very disturbing for, I think, the average American to say, how does a politician get rich just being in office?
Yeah.
Or how does his family get payments? And so this certainly, your word of compromise certainly is appropriate to be used here. And we just have to start with new leadership in the White House, someone who has got a track record, a career of decades of trust in the transaction they have. We from the private sector, we hold accountability for corporate officers in America right now at a tighter level than we do for members of Congress or people that are in the White House.
Yeah.
And it's time again, let's get a business leader back in the White House that understands how to build trust.
And you're hoping that leader is you. Governor, in the 2024 Republican presidential primary, you're polling at 1% in the Real Clear Politics average. Here you are at the debate, the second Fox Business debate just a week and a half ago. Watch.
And when you decide that we're going to take all of your taxpayer monies, take $1 billion, subsidize a certain type of vehicle, and the batteries come from China. China controls 85% of the rare earth minerals. They're called rare earth because they're measured in parts per million. China is moving 100,000 pounds of earth in Indonesia, in Africa. They're literally destroying the planet so that they can make a battery that's in a car subsidized here. That's why they're striking, because they need 2/3 less workers to build an electric car. Joe Biden, this strike is at Joe Biden's feet.
Governor, you're spot on the issues. Obviously, talking about the UAW strike, we got a lot more strikes, by the way. Since you said it, healthcare workers are on strike right now. But let's face it, you're at 1%. What is your path to victory?
Well, that's a national poll. We've been campaigning in Iowa, New Hampshire. I'm ahead of some of the other folks that are on stage in those states, and yet we're the least known candidate. So far, if we go from 50% well-known to 10%, to 100% name recognition in those states, we're going to be in double digits. And by January comes around, we're going to be in one of the top spots in Iowa and New Hampshire. So we feel very confident that our message about economy, energy, national security is resonating. We appreciate everybody that's getting behind us. We appreciate all the positive feedback we've gotten from the last debate, and we're going to be on the ballot in those states. And we know that people understand that the economy is the #1 issue. We better get someone who actually understands the economy, understands foreign competition, like I have through my career. When I was 1989 was my first trip to China. I was a kid, basically, as an entrepreneur. I walked into a street market, and they'd stolen our software.
Unbelievable. Wow. Governor, we're happy that you're getting more airtime, because the public needs to hear your ideas on issues as well. Good to see you this morning, sir. Thank you.